Any questions on that question? Comments?
Are you speaking more of management of a lift support department as it sits off by itself, or a case management?
Okay, I'm going to repeat the question because our cameraman asked me to. So let me know if I repeat the question properly. You asked if we were talking about having a litigation support group in legal, like managing a litigation support group, or?
Well, in talking about project management, are you talking about managing within a lit support department, or are you talking about case management? The case comes in, you know, it has dates, it has things that happen through its life cycle. Are you differentiating? Because the reason I'm asking is that what drives the case management is the attorney. So you can't really step in all the time and say, here's how we're going to manage this case. And maybe people have some comments about that, or how they introduce better case management techniques to the attorney, because they are the ones that drive that process.
Right. So the question was, are we talking about project management in a litigation support group, or are we talking about case management?
I feel like they actually go hand in hand. For my experience, that really, you know, on the vendor side, we're constantly looking at the idea of let's get involved as soon as possible. Let's start, you know, really from the very initiation of the case. Let's really try to get involved and understand the entire life cycle of that case, which really gets into your point of the case management aspect. You know, what's the discovery schedule look like? When are all the court appointed deadlines? What's the strategy from the actual attorney and from the partners that you work with? I think, though, that does fall really hand in hand with what we're talking about, really the litigation support side. When you have a particular project that you need to work on, a review, when you need to do a production, or when you're actually doing a collection. When you're doing each one of these, you need to be, okay, all those deadlines are all relying on each other. So it is very difficult. I mean, it's, I know attorneys are always, perfect, but at the same time, there's a lot of, really kind of working with them and then showing your successes. I found that early on for myself, really showing the advantage of litigation support and the methodology, and really making the client and the attorney shine in front of other people in the client's eyes. That was where I got my successes, and that's where we started developing more and more, trying to make them look good.
So for me, I think I'm referring more on the case side than managing a department, because as a lit support manager, I have one job, which is manage my people and resources and all that. The other side is managing the cases as they come in, and that's where I'm leaning towards in this discussion, is how do you set up or setting up procedures and processes for a case or for a part of a case. So for example, I know the attorneys, lit support is very different in that deadlines are, yesterday and everything's tomorrow and I have to have this now. And, I remember somebody coming in and saying, I need a database tonight because we're leaving tomorrow morning to go out of town and we have to log all this data. And it was like, really, and the rest of the people in IT were like, are they kidding? And I'm like, no, they're not kidding. We need to build a database. And that's how our world is. But the reality is, a lot of what we do is repeatable. So processing e-discovery, even though there's some different nuances in each case, it's still kind of a standard thing you go through. When the discovery comes in, you may log it. You should have a checklist of what things are going to happen to that. When the information's coming back, how does it get loaded? You may be processing to native versus TIFF. You may have different standards depending on what you're doing. But developing those types of standards for any repeatable process in your department will help greatly.
I think it's both. You have to be able to know what the attorney's deadlines are and for him or her, and then also know all the details that you need to then support that attorney with all the projects internally. Who are the people working on it? How much time are they working on the tasks? Who has too much on their plate? Maybe you need to do a little resource allocation where you need to pull in this particular person because that particular person is key to that particular type of project for this particular attorney. So having a system, a project management system set in place and methodologies can help you achieve that as well.
Any other questions for that one?
Did we answer your question? That's a good question.
Okay, we're going to move on to question number 3. What are some steps litigation support professionals can take to incorporate project management into their daily work process? Okay, this is where you get your pens and pencils. You're going to have some valuable bits to take back with you. That's going to start.
And I do apologize if I do sound like I'm reading, because I actually will be reading. So, to just start, I mean, we deal with a very, I think, a difficult business to run a project management system. And I mean, we have court-appointed deadlines, very strict deadlines. We have lots of variables in what we do. It's very tough for project managers. We also have a lack of resources. We don't really have that much out there to really be able to do something quickly. And last but least, not least, we have to be perfect. I mean, this is really important stuff, and it has to be perfect. So what we found at ICON is, and I think this is something that you can really take home, is that we keep on talking about the idea of setting up a project management methodology. Our main focus here are that we are always constantly setting expectations, anticipating problems and concerns, and communicating. Those are our fundamental reasons why we do what we do and why we have set this up. When we developed this, we really went back to, we talked about a couple of times, PMI and the PMP PMP principles, which is just Professional Project Management Institute, Professional Project Management. What we've done is that we set up what we call and we did this with an Excel spreadsheet, just the 5 phases of project management. The 5 phases of project management for us are the project intake, the project schedule, processing, delivery, and then we call it, post-mortem or, post-project. The idea behind this is that, we have these 5 phases. Do you do all 5 phases every time? Yes. Do you do them to the extent that I'm going to kind of explain in a second? Not necessarily. You're not going to necessarily have a very elaborate system with all the different documentation, but you need to make sure that you follow all steps and you're kind of questioning as you go through this. We actually have set up, we use Outlook and we use SharePoint, Microsoft SharePoint, to really manage all our cases at this point. And we really, on the Outlook side, we set up a project folder, and inside each of those project folders we have categories. Our categories include intake documentation or scope documentation. This is where we have our SOWs, our manuals, our cost documentation, our methodologies, kind of everything to set up the initial scope of the project. We also have the next category would be reports. All reports that we have as we go through the different phases, we will make sure that we keep all those reports together. We have the project update folder, and I'm going to discuss this a little bit more. We actually have a document that we call the project update form, and it's a consistent document that we use throughout the process to update clients. Samples. Today, it's really important that we are running samples through entire processing, so we need to make sure that we have the samples. And then communication, just your everyday back and forth communication. There are probably a lot more out there. These are the ones that we've kind of simplified, really brought simple for us. But it's, and we actually put the same entire folder structure into our SharePoint as well, so that we have a place to be able to go through and look and find the documentation that we need as we go through a project. Just going to start up, one, we talked about this already, but we are constantly looking at the entire life cycle of a project. When you pick something up and when you start a project, we're asking questions way to the left on the EDR model regarding identification, how things were collected. We're constantly looking at the end results and making sure that we are, making sure that we have the final product done and put together, and we understand where people are going. The